here's a clear image. My father, a pure Filipino, was able to visit Palestine many times back in the day. But my mother, who's a pure Palestinian, has never set foot in Palestine. Never.
Wow.
Yes. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Half a Nice Day podcast with your host, Janine.
And Joshua.
And today is another special episode. I feel like all of our past episodes are all special.
And all of our past episodes involve a guest as well. So
true.
It's really picking up traction, and I like it.
Yes. So our guest for today, she is in the Philippines currently. She is half Palestinian and half Filipino. She is a host in the Philippines, and she is also Miss Earth Philippines Air 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And her name is Zahra Bianca Saldua.
Welcome to the show.
Woo! Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. So maybe just to give a background as to how we found Zahra. So one night, I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep because if some of you, well, I hope that most of you are aware of what's currently happening in Palestine and Israel, the whole conflict, the current war that is happening. And it's been happening for years and years and years. And this is one of the worst years so far. And I really pray to God that it ends. But one night I couldn't sleep, and I was talking to Joshua. I messaged him and I told him we need someone on the podcast to talk about and shed light about this situation, because I know that a lot of people know about it currently because it's the hot topic, but we wanted someone to speak from their own experience, because I mean, Zahra is half Palestinian, and who better to talk about this than a half Palestinian, half Filipino? So again, thank you so much for being here. We're very blessed to have someone to shed light with this whole sad thing that is happening, and we really hope that it ends. But before we say that, at least there's a little glimpse of light that is happening. Just yesterday, Israel agreed to ceasefire after almost 11 nights of shooting, bombs, grenades, sending in their military, killing innocent lives. And for now, they've ceased fire, and I hope that it continues that way. So there's light at the end of the tunnel. Of course, at the end of the day, we want freedom for everyone to recognize that Palestine is a country. That's the end goal. But we're stepping towards the right direction. So again, a little bit of a happy news to the current sad happenings that is, happening in the world. But again, thank you, Zahra, for coming in. So maybe tell our listeners about yourself. Where you were born in Jordan, and let us know, like, how did your parents meet? Like, how did it all start?
Actually, my parents' love story is definitely one that you would see in the movies, because it's a whirlwind of events. My parents didn't come from rich families, and they were both coming from big families of 10 brothers and sisters, and they just had a lot of struggle in their lives. My dad was an OFW, where he met my mom in Kuwait, but prior to that, he was actually studying to be a priest. He was in a seminary, so he met my mom because he had to leave to another country to support his family. And when he met my mom, he was actually my mom's boss. So a lot of people give me comments, especially those who are looking at stereotypes of what mixed Filipinos are, like, oh, maybe your mom's a maid and your dad's like this Arab dude, or, there are so many other stereotypes, which can be right, but it's not necessary. Like, there's no shame in it in the first place, and it's not necessary. But in this case, for my parents, my dad was the supervisor and my mom was working with him, and my mom didn't like him at all, but my dad really liked my mom. Then he started doing the whole Filipino courtship, went to the house of my mom, and my mom's parents was like, who's this guy? But of course, as Arabs, they would welcome him in the house.
Right.
It took a year of him going to my mom's house, and she didn't even know. Like, she was like, why are you going to my house? And she saw that he was persistent and generous, and he also converted to Islam. So it was a whole love story. And from there, they experienced 2 wars together, going through the highs of life, being super rich, to going to the lows of life, like losing everything, which
Wow.
is one of the reasons why we went to the Philippines. We moved in 2005. I spent 13 years in Jordan. I was born there. My brother was born in the States, but we grew up in Jordan. And we left because of the war that was happening in Iraq.
Right.
And in Jordan, we were being affected because of, the economy was going down. I studied in an American school, and my parents were feeling like, oh, we can't afford this anymore because of the economic hit. And being from an American school, we were also at a threat or at a risk, because we also had threats for bombs and everything. And my dad was like, you know what, let's just go to the States. But we didn't end up going to the States. We went to the Philippines for quote unquote vacation.
The next best option after US is the Philippines. So
For sure. Actually, we thought it was a stopover, but it ended up becoming,
The permanent-
the final
the end
destination.
destination. That's true. The final destination. So how was it like moving from Jordan to the Philippines? Was it like, did you feel any type of culture shock? Like, okay, you came in from an Arab country and then Philippines. How was that?
I feel like the culture was more or less the same, because a lot of people think that Filipinos and Arabs are so different, but we actually have a lot of the same habits, like leaving your shoes out of the door, respect, giving also food to your guests all the time, loving to laugh, loving music. All of these things that were really part of our values are the same. We're also close-knit families, both Arabs and Filipinos. But what really got me was just how society treated each other, like how people interact. I think that was the most difficult, because interacting with Filipinos abroad is different than interacting with Filipinos in the Philippines.
That is really true.
It was much different for me. And I had my fair share of interactions with Filipinos in Jordan, because we were very close to the Filipino community there. But it was still different.
Did you start
So it was a little bit of a shock.
Did you speak Tagalog when you were in Jordan?
Very, very little Tagalog, like very basic Tagalog. But I did understand a little bit, because I did watch TFC sometimes. And you hear it from the other Filipino kids. So you kind of understand the language, but I didn't really speak it like a whole sentence. So when I moved here, I forced myself to really study Filipino.
It's not that difficult, like comparing to Arabic. Arabic is, I would say, a difficult language to learn, especially when we change, speaking to a woman and speaking to a man, the words change. But in Tagalog, if you just hear it within, people speaking the language within the background, you'll learn it easily. I think it's a fairly easier language to learn compared to Arabic.
Yeah, so like for just an example of myself, like we did study Arabic growing up in high school. I can't speak a word of Arabic right now. And in our household, we speak only English. We only speak English, but I picked up Tagalog just from my mom talking to us, from my mom yelling at us, and my mom like basically conversing with other people, and watching what you say, TFC, GMA.
Yeah, I think that's how we learn, from TFC, GMA, all of these Filipino shows. Do you still speak Arabic?
I do still speak Arabic, and I agree with you. Arabic is very difficult, because even if I grew up with Arab speakers, like my cousins and my uncles and aunts, they were all speaking to me in Arabic. They never spoke English. In school, it was still difficult. Like I would still get like a B rather than an A. And switching to Filipino was much easier, but it was also because I was in a school that spoke mostly Filipino. Unlike in Jordan, I studied in an American school, so everybody spoke English. So I feel like that had a huge impact also. And I learned just listening to Filipino music and watching Filipino. I forced myself literally to immerse in Filipino pop culture so that I can understand how to communicate. And I feel like Filipino is easier because you can mix it and call it Taglish.
Yes.
So if you put mag and tayo and then any English word in between, that's basically Tagalog. Like any Filipino would understand. Mag-eat tayo, mag-walk tayo, mag-watch tayo, mag-wash tayo. Like all of these things is still going to be considered as Filipino,
Yeah.
That is so true, because that's how he pretends, well, he says that he's fluent in Filipino or Tagalog, but when you speak to him, that's how he speaks. Like, watch tayo ng movie. I'm like, okay, that's Tagalog, okay?
No, I can speak Tagalog, but like as I've always told everyone, it comes out in emergency situations. Like today I was in hospital and the nurse was talking to me in Tagalog and I'm like, I can't act like I'm like an Indian or a foreigner or something. So I have to converse back to her in Tagalog. Otherwise, because my nationality is Filipino, and if she speaks to me in Tagalog and if I don't reply in Filipino, she'll think, oh, this guy must be like a fraud. He must be committing insurance fraud because he looks like this and he doesn't.
But I saw her face when she saw you. Like, she said, like Kuya Josh or something like that.
Yeah.
She spoke in Tagalog, but she wasn't looking at you. And then when she moved her head and she's like, "You're Joshua. You don't look Filipino
You're
to me."
Indian, dude.
But it's really nice to know that you forced yourself to learn Filipino and to adapt, because now that you're in the Philippines, although everyone in the Philippines speaks English, it's still nice to know that you're giving importance to your culture. And I'm sure your dad really, really loves how you're showing homage or respect to his culture.
I think the most important thing for me wasn't really like respecting culture, because anybody can respect the culture whether or not you spoke the language. Because there are a lot of halfies like us who still can't grasp Filipino, like, and it's not their fault. Sometimes some people have a more difficult time learning language. For me, it was more about just connecting. So it was more difficult for me to connect to other people when they didn't understand the context of what I was saying.
Right.
So my jokes weren't landing, and it was important for me that people knew that I was funny and they didn't think that I was funny. So I was like, how am I going to say this in Filipino, So I think connection in terms of language has a huge impact. So that was really my main goal, to really get friends and connect and make people understand me, because I felt like an outsider even if I were in the Philippines. And I think Happies feel that, like, no matter if you're half Arab, if you're in your Arab country, you still feel like an other, and if you're in a Filipino country, you still feel like an other. Like, you're not really there, which is a good thing and a bad thing, but either way, it's the best of both worlds.
That is so true. We touched upon that particular subject in one of our podcasts about, being half and half and in a different country, because when we're in the Philippines or here, or for me, Lebanon, or for him, if you go to India, like, where is home? Because whenever you're in one particular country, you miss the other countries that you consider home as well. And we feel like we're also a foreigner in our own country. Like, when I'm in the Philippines, I look different. When you're in the Philippines, you look different. So when you introduce yourself or when you start speaking in Filipino, they're like, oh, you're one of us. Like, just because you're able to speak the language, which is how I understood what you mentioned as well.
No, but it is very true. Like, when I was in Philippines, when I go to Philippines, or when I'm in India, I always feel like a stranger, because I was born and raised. Janine and I were both raised in the UAE. So like, I'm more attuned to like a Philippine and Indian culture, but from a Middle Eastern side. And yeah, when I'm in Philippines, and they always be like, when they always try to talk to me, I'm like, I reply back in Tagalog, and they're like, "Ay, Filipino ka pala." I'm like, yeah, and then they can't like overcharge me for something, because I spend a lot of time in Green Hills when I'm there. So I'm like, I want to bargain. It's like, you can give me the normal price.
I need my proper price.
I need these Nikes Air Force Ones.
I just wanted to go back to what you mentioned earlier, because when we talk about halfies, especially in the Philippines, people are used to the moms being the foreigner. And you said that your mom and your dad's marriage is a little bit unusual, because I'm not sure if we mentioned to those who are listening, your dad is the Filipino and your mom is the Palestinian. So how do you feel that a lot of people maybe are not judging, but are starting to question, like, how is it that your mom is the foreigner and your dad is the Filipino? And growing up, did you receive a lot of those comments?
A lot. Like, I can't even count on my fingers, on my hands, on my toes even. I can't count how many times people are like, how did that happen? Aren't Arabs like really, really strict and they don't like, marrying outside of their race? Or what did your dad do to kind of get a foreigner? Like, it was really weird to me, because I never really thought that there was any type of prejudice against one race. I've never seen it in the Arab culture where my mom's family was like, why did you marry this person, like outside of your race? But the older that you get, you kind of understand that some people have this notion. And I have to like explain it to them, and I have to let them know that there are more people like that, because I'm not the only one. I have a friend who's half Iraqi, half Filipino, and her mom was Armenian Iraqi. Oh, wow. And her dad was a pure Filipino. So there are many like us. And I guess it's just unusual because most of the stories that we hear on media and from our families and everything, it's always the woman who's a Filipino and the dad who's a foreigner. And a lot of times it's always the woman is a maid, when that's not 100% true. There are a lot of Filipino women who had different types of career, who were able to get foreign guys, and not always because of money, because that's also another issue in our culture. Oh, siguro nag-asawa siya sa, or maybe she got married to a foreigner because he's rich. So it's something that I want to kill. Like this type of thought, this type of thinking, I want to kill it, because it's not beneficial to anybody, and it just brings out more stereotypes and more prejudice.
Yeah, especially if you're receiving those comments since you were young, at such a young age, you wouldn't really grasp, like, why do they always question it? And to you, growing up with two different cultured parents, to you, it's what's normal. But then when people start questioning it, you start questioning yourself. Wait, am I not normal? Is this not the normal thing that happens? Because I also got a lot of those questions or a lot of those comments like, oh, like, how did your parents meet? And of course, because my mom is the Filipino, most of the time there's this connotation in the Philippines like, oh, nakabingwit si ate, because, like, oh, your dad is the foreigner and perhaps your mom needed money and she needed to marry someone who was rich. That's the mentality back then. And there's still a little bit of those comments that you would hear nowadays, but I'm glad that more and more halfies are coming out and starting to speak their piece, that people get educated as well, that it's normal, whether the mom is the Filipino or the dad is the Filipino, and that's what makes it super cool.
I think it's a very big trend now as well, because the last episode, was it? Second last episode that we did of this podcast was a guy who sent us a question asking it, how is it to, like, what are the ways, and give us tips and tricks on how to date Arab women. So I think it's like, yeah, everyone just wants to mingle now together with different nationalities. I think it's an like old school thinking that, yeah, you only have to stay married to or find someone of your own race. But now I just love it. I love mixed babies. I love seeing the world like expanding and having like a unique face, like trying to guess, oh, where's this person from?
Yeah. And you not being able to, right? Like you look at someone and you're like, she or he looks like a half, but I don't know from where.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fun. It's really fun to be a happy, because you get to experience all of these things and share different cultures, and even back up your culture if they think a certain way, But what I really feel is that Filipinos can be critical. It's either they love the fact that you are a halfie and they're like, oh, you're so pretty, or you're so handsome, or oh, that's so cool that you're a halfie. And then there is the total 360, where if you criticize something about being Filipino, they're like, what are you talking about? You're a halfie. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not pure Filipino, so you don't understand what you're saying. So I'm like, I can love my culture, whether it's Filipino or Arab, and I can criticize it at the same time. It doesn't mean that I don't love it. It's just we all have love-hate relationships with our culture and our people. It's just a reality. It doesn't mean that we hate it or we're saying bad things. Because I'm saying a lot of these things on TikTok too. So right. The mema people or the mema sabi, just so that they want to say something.
Yeah.
They get it out there, and if they don't like what you say, they attack your other half. Like they attack the Arab side of me. But if they love what they say, it's like, oh, because they're Filipino. You know what I mean?
I think that's a problem with TikTok or like any other social media platform, just like what Sarah said. So she's half Filipino, half Egyptian, that we interviewed 2 episodes ago. And she's also on TikTok a lot, but she also receives hate from the Filipino community, from the Arab community. And I feel like there's always going to be haters anywhere. But on social media, it's much more easier for them to spew their hate just because they're not in front of you physically. And they can hide behind, their phones. the keyboard warriors.
And it's amplified as well when it goes like viral or something like that. And even for me, like I do stand-up comedy here, and I make joke about Filipinos and Indians, and then Indians come up to me and say, "Oh, you can't make fun of us like that." But I love India and I am Indian, so I can do it. But if it's like a different nationality making fun of Indians and Filipinos, it might sound racist. But since I'm both nationalities, I feel like I have the authority to make fun about
it's my culture.
Yeah,
I can talk about it. How is it? Now we're talking about culture. Like, how is it since you've moved to the Philippines? Do you still have that strong sense of, the Arab culture, and do you still practice like specific things that are tied to your Arab roots?
I think I was very lucky that I grew up all the way until I was 13 to have the fundamentals of, or the values of the Arab culture really stuck with me, because it's really different. I'm not saying that the Arab culture or the Arab values are more important than the Filipino values, but the thing is, I came from the Arab world where it's just the opposite of what Filipinos think. And I'm not hating on Filipinos, because yes, there are some bad experiences that our kababayans have experienced in the Middle East, but it's like a few cases out of the 2 million Filipinos in the entire Middle East. And most of them are staying in the Middle East for more than 10 years. So how can you say like all Arabs are bad? So I'm lucky that I was able to grow up there to see the truth of the Middle East and understand what is it that makes it good and bad. And the same thing when I moved here, but we were able to bring the values from the Middle East. So whenever people tell me that they like me and who I am and everything, and then they say it's not how Arabs in my mind are, they're surprised that this is how an Arab would be. And I say, yeah, because I got my values from there. We're not different from Filipinos. It's the same. It's just that I have the reality from when I grew up, and we still practice a lot, especially since we're a Muslim family. We still practice a lot of the traditions, a lot of the values, the religious acts. So all of these things have been part of my personality, have been part of my day-to-day lifestyle and the way I treat my family and my friends. And I think one thing that I wanted to mention was the fact that I can educate other people on how the two cultures are different and the two cultures are similar. There's one more thing that I wanted to say, and it was like a really good point, but it just like went whoosh. I can't remember it, but if it comes back.
If it comes back, let's just stop everything and be like, I remembered it, and then we go back.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean that's really important that you talk about both of your cultures at the same time, how different it is, how similar it is, because I wanted to touch upon what you said earlier. I think when there's something negative, especially in the news, it's being amplified so much and it's generalized. Me and you, we've been here in Dubai for almost 30 years. And yes, unfortunately, there are bad things that are happening, but that's not everything. That's like a tiny, tiny piece of a bigger, happier community of Filipinos here in Dubai, right?
No, it's like that saying, yeah, like good news travels fast, but bad news travels even faster. And like you can, like all the good things that happen in the Middle East to our families, to our friends, will easily be forgotten with one single act of like a negative act, basically.
Yeah.
And it's also how the media portrays it. There are all these news channels that really want to attack Muslims, that really want to attack the Middle East.
Right.
That's where there's so many travel bans going on and everything. So, and news distorts a lot of information all the time.
Yeah.
And people repost stuff on social media, then it paints the wrong picture for everyone. Like this whole Palestine and Israel thing. Every other story now that I see on Instagram has something to say about this whole situation, and it's always some small differences, in everything. So you really don't know what to believe at the end of the day.
Yeah.
As well. So
you mean because it gets distorted, like from one person to another.
Yeah, that happens, and then at the end of the day, I'm like, I cannot make up my own decision on which side I wanna. No, not which side I want to believe, but what I actually want to believe at the end of the day. So it's
because of the different.
It is like that.
I think that's why it's important to have these type of platforms, which are, real and raw and experiences of people, because news sometimes, although it's really beneficial for us to see what's happening, you don't know what's true and what's not, because some people can get paid. Some people can get paid for their voices to be amplified, heard even more. And I don't know if it's mostly real or
not. It
not.
does cause this mass hysteria.
Yeah.
I feel like we're gonna hit like the Palestinian issue just
Yes.
in a bit. That's what I feel like we're going. But like
Yes.
right before we hit that, you guys just triggered what I was about to say, because it's directly connected to what you guys said about how bad things, it travels really, really fast. It's faster than the good news. And I just wanted to share that in the Arab world, I never heard anything bad about Filipinos. You know, they never made fun of Filipinos. They always love Filipinos. Yes, there are a few Arabs who are racist here and there because they are uneducated. But like here in the Philippines, all of the people that I've met have a negative connotation against the Arabs. So I feel like it's a very one-sided relationship, because the media that was being fed to the Filipinos were all bad news. And it feels like if one Filipino was treated well by an Arab person, then it's a miracle. You know, like it's a miracle that only happens once in a lifetime. But every day there's like a rape thing or abuse thing or all of these things. They don't understand that even my family has spent 25 years, my mom and my dad, they spent 25 years in Jordan being the ate and kuya of the Filipino community. They saw everything, all types of issues about why things happen the way it does. And you will be shocked by the stories and how, I'm not saying that Filipinos are the cause, but how stories are being made up just so that some Filipinos get what they want.
Right. Yeah.
You know? I'm not saying that they're the villains, they're the real villains, but I'm just saying there's more to the story than people think that are in the media.
That is so true.
There are so many people who got affected by, like rape happens.
Yes.
Even in the Philippines, it happens, right?
Yes.
It happens everywhere in the world. But then some Filipinos are being brainwashed to say that they've been raped when they've not been raped, just so that they can go home, just because they don't want to pay the fee of like, just because they're homesick and they can't go home because they signed a contract, like it's professional, but they just want to go home, and other Filipinos are telling them, oh, just say you got raped and then they'll help you out. But how many people are going to be affected by it? The family, the members, the children, the wife, you know, this is destroying a family of an Arab. And I'm not defending all Arabs, because again, there are bad Arabs, but again, there are bad Filipinos. So I don't want to make blanket statements. I don't want Arabs saying all Filipinos are like this. And I don't want Filipinos saying all Arabs or any other nationality is like this. You should take it from a case-to-case basis and make sure you get all the facts. That's it.
I think that's very true. We're not saying there aren't bad people. There are bad people and there are also good people. But I think that's where we need to look at it on a person basis, not because he or she is from a certain nationality or from a certain race, because that's where it's not fair. That's where racism comes in. Just because you're an Arab, you're this, or just because you're a Filipino, you're this. And maybe, in my opinion, one of the main things why Filipinos have this connotation against Arabs is we're very obsessed with American culture, and we know how America paints the Middle East, and it's just not true. You know, when they talk about Islam, they talk about it synonymously to terrorism, and this is what they feed to people who don't know better. And those, you know, in the Philippines, the way that we look at these American movies and all of these American shows and how they portray Arabs, of course, we're going to be, you know, brainwashed like, oh, okay, that's how Arabs are. That's how they are to other people. They're terrorists. They're bad people. But it's not necessarily true.
And what you said is true as well. Like the whole Western side, how they portray Muslims, you know, like, oh, they're terrorists, and how video games portray like, okay, we're gonna like when I play video games, it's always like in a desert, and there's people like wearing the turbans,
like Counter-Strike.
Exactly.
Yes.
Everything. There's the counter terrorists and they're the terrorists. So it's literally everything, and it's like one bad apple ruins a whole basket. Is that the saying? I don't know what the saying is.
What did you say before? Like one rotten egg ruins the whole tray. I'm like, where are you getting these things from?
He's getting a lot of analogies. They're all spot on though.
I know.
And no, but and the rape allegation things is very true. Like I've read like a lot of things about men whose whole lives have been ruined because of rape allegations, even if nothing ever happened. And I am a men's right activist as well, as much as I am a women's right activist. But it is very sad to see that they're using this rape
As a
as
loophole.
as a easy way out, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was Qatar or Kuwait where there was a family that where the man murdered his maid who was Pinay, and then Duterte said, "Okay, everyone in the everyone in that country come back to
It's
Philippines right now."
Kuwait. I think it was Kuwait. Yeah, yeah. He took home like a lot of domestic helpers from Kuwait, and then stopped Filipinos from going from the Philippines to Kuwait.
Yeah.
He said like enough, like I'm not gonna take this. But the way the way that it was portrayed is like all Kuwaitis are bad.
And I feel like it's also directly connected to how Filipinos now are honestly, like I love my fellow Filipinos. I joined the Army Reservists just so that I can help my Filipino people. So nobody come at me right now and tell me like, oh, you should be representing your Filipino blood and blah, 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 because it's not about that. It's about everybody just being on the right side of history, being on human rights. Just because you hate a person doesn't mean you should hate their entire family. That's how I'm trying to look at it. And now Filipinos are all desensitized on what's happening in the Middle East. Not all, but like most. What I've been seeing on social media, I'm really sad to see that a lot of Filipinos are desensitized to what's happening because Arabs have been portrayed as bad guys, like you said, in the Western media so well. Like there is never going to be any bad guy that plays that role so well other than Arabs.
Yeah.
All of the bad guys, even in like, let's say 300 with Leonidas, the person that they were going against I think it was Persian, but their features, all of their features are Arab features, like strongly Arab features.
Yeah. Which is
So
really, really sad.
And they don't understand that the terrorists, like let's say recently I was watching a documentary about how ISIS is still going underground. Like, yes, they have been stopped in mainstream, but they have been going underground right now. And the ones that are fighting them is not the States. It's not the West. It's fellow Iraqis that are also risking their lives to stop this. It's not like Arabs can call up ISIS and say, Habibi, stop this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We don't support groups like that.
That's true.
Just like not all Americans support the KKK, or not all Filipinos support like the NPA or other terrorist groups. Like we don't judge the entire nation or the entire race from a group of people, even if they're doing it in that name.
Yeah, 100% agree.
That's so true. I wanted to touch upon what you said earlier, that you actually served in the Philippine Army Command Reserve. Before you became a second lieutenant, you won Miss Earth Philippines Air in 2018, and just within that whole year, you also became a second lieutenant. So, just if we can touch upon that subject, because for me, it's just so cool to see a woman who can be a beauty pageant contestant and also be in a man's world. Can we talk about like how did you get to both of those roles?
Honestly, a lot of people think that it's such a huge jump, which aesthetically it is. Aesthetically, like if you look at it, it is a huge jump. However, if I look at the reasons why I joined a pageant and the reasons why I joined the Army, they're the same. I never really thought of joining a pageant before. It wasn't really my dream, but it came out from confidence, a newfound confidence that I got from losing weight. And at the same time, it was mostly because I needed a platform for charity, for humanitarian projects that I've been doing even before pageantry. I first joined a pageant in 2013 for Miss World, and it was with Megan Young, and I got second runner-up for the first time. And that whole journey just taught me how to get in touch with my female side. Because honestly, I was really a lot like a tomboyish type of girl. I was very rugged. In college, if you go before Miss World in 2013, in college, I voluntarily signed up for ROTC.
Wow.
So yeah, so it wasn't like it was forced upon me. We can choose whether we want CWTS or civil welfare something something, or if I wanted to go for ROTC, and I chose ROTC because I felt like it would be a very important skill to have, and at the same time I really had a connection to the Philippines and I wanted to serve at some point. There was even a point where my father and I had a conversation where I said I wanted to join the military, because also my uncle from my mother's side was a part of the military actions of the United Nations where they helped refugees, and he was part of that security task force.
Right.
Not the military task force, but the security task force. And I was just going through that direction, like more on that side. But then I got the opportunity for Miss World. I joined because I had a lot of projects that I wanted to push through. And when I became a beauty queen, it was easier to get donations. It was easier to speak about these issues because people look at you more with the crown on your head and with a sash across your body. When I joined Miss Earth, that was another opportunity for me to speak out and have another platform. And I didn't really get what I wanted, which is, of course, the main crown. But it did lead me to realizing that I can still serve my people, if not as a beauty queen or as a spokesperson. There are other ways. And at that time, I was 28. I could not join another pageant. And I said, what other ways can I serve my people? And that was when I decided to join the Army Reservists, which I'm still a part of and still active in, but in different ways. But that was the whole story. If people think, oh, it's such a huge change, it is in terms of physical appearance, but the core of it is the same. Helping people is what I really wanted, and having a bigger platform would help me a lot. And pageantry and the Army were the hugest or the biggest platforms I could get.
I mean, having that title, just when you introduce yourself, or when we introduced you and you have that title next to you, people are like, wow,
That's when you have their ears really.
Yeah. And just for me, it's just super cool that as a woman, you do not have to box yourself with just being a girly girl. You can be a girly girl, and you can also be a girly girl who can carry
a badass.
Exactly. Who can
a female Rambo.
Exactly. Who can be on the field and who can actually serve her country. And I think that's a really good role model for the young girls everywhere.
Yeah, and I think like you're now become like a role model for a lot of people, and this is something I've noticed with us Halfies, since we've grown up in like a mixed cultural household. We're so attuned to the people around us. Like we're so emotionally aware of what's going on around us, and we see things, and we're like, we really want to help. Like Janine and I, we have a soft spot for all these things that are happening. Like even in the Middle East, especially Dubai, where everyone thinks, oh, people drive around in Lamborghinis and eat at the tallest restaurant in the world, but there's still so many people who are under the poverty line over here.
Yeah,
there's a very big and rampant lower middle class as well, and lower class. And Janine and I, we still do whatever we can to help these people around us. We still try to support them in any way that we can, even though it might be limited, but we are also trying to see what ways we can help these people.
Yeah.
And it's really remarkable what you do, and it's I feel very honored to even have you on this podcast.
Exactly.
Like it's something really cool, and it's really cool hearing that like people always, especially in the Middle Eastern side where women don't have much of a voice, and it's great to see that you're trying to go through those barriers and break that glass ceiling.
Yeah. So not just the label. So again, thank you so much. And one of the main things that we would love you to help us is to spread awareness to what is currently happening in Palestine. And if you can just maybe break down for us, for those who are not aware of the history of why this is currently happening.
Honestly, when we go to the history, it really depends on where you want to start. Like if we say it started in 1948 with the Nakba, which is the start of the ethnic cleansing, where 700,000 Palestinians became homeless almost overnight, then other people will say, oh, but before that, like if you go years before that, then it's supposed to be belonging to the Jewish and all of these things. But people don't understand that land, it was really Egypt, Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, all of that cluster of land has been a way for many cultures to go through, many different cultures to go through. And to claim that Palestinians aren't from there, the question is, where did they come from? You know,
Right.
where did they come from? And a lot of Zionists, I don't like calling them Israelis, and I don't like calling them Jewish people, because majority of Jewish people don't believe in what the Zionists are saying.
Yeah.
So it's really different. We have to also be very careful, because the message has always been across the board: anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. It's not anti-Jewish. And all of the people listening, if you're pro-Palestinian or pro-Palestine, that does not mean you should be anti-Jewish. And if you are anti-Jewish, that means you are in fact anti-Semitic, and that should be eliminated, because you cannot be pro-Palestinian and anti-Semitic at the same time, because that means you're still on the side of hate.
Yes.
And we're not trying to be on the side of hate. What we're criticizing are the Zionists, because their whole ideology or their whole practice is really to cleanse the Palestine of the Palestinian people. I just want everybody to know that Zionism has been there before the Zionists came into Palestine. And if you can look at the actual history, even at the end of the Ottoman Empire, right? Yes, the Ottoman Empire came into Palestine and they made a lot of people Muslims, but that area has gone through so many changes, so many. So if we're just going to play this game of who started it, and we go like 4,000 years, it's a moot point. It's a moot point.
Yes.
We're looking at what is Palestine right now. The people made there are coming from a lot of different cultures, and that's what makes the Palestinian people unique and related or connected to the land. The people who have stayed there. And just perspective for everybody, especially the Filipinos who are listening, Palestine has been a home for Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people.
Yes, agreed. Because why is it that years and years back, people were able to live within the same...
in harmony.
Why is it that in 2021, this is still happening? And my head just can't understand that fact that it is happening in 2021. And it continues to happen from 1948.
It's like a never-ending war in itself, you know? It keeps on happening, it stops for a bit, keeps on happening again, stops.
Exactly. And I think I want to stress the fact that it's so important for us to talk about not Jews themselves, because again, as you pointed out, there are a lot of Jewish people who are against what is happening. Yes, there are still those Jews and Israelis who are fighting for their country and claiming that Palestine is their land. But there are also a lot who are saying, no, this is not acceptable. We can't kill innocent lives just because we are claiming that that's our land.
That's 100% true. It's 100% true. And that was like, let's start with that history, you know, like when we talk about them living peacefully, that was already the end of the Ottoman Empire. And if you notice how Lebanon and Syria, they can actually speak French, mostly Lebanon, they can speak French, right? Because after the Ottoman Empire, the UK and France, they were already starting to colonize that area. And then they decided, you know, this is a big cluster, let's just draw lines and borders, because before it was just one huge nation, and they didn't have that insecurity of, you know what, we should draw our borders. You know, they were just happy to be a part of this huge community. But then when the UK or Britain came in, and then let's not say the UK, but let's say Britain came in, and so did France, they started cutting it up. So Jordan and Palestine was under the British rule, and then France took up Syria and Lebanon. So from there, it just became a part of another colonizing body.
Yes.
Right? But then Syria and Lebanon and Jordan all had their independence. That's why they were able to build their own governments and everything. But Palestine went from about to have their independence to being transferred to another colonizer.
Yes.
So we went from Ottoman Empire to being colonized again by the British, and then they colonized us again, but in a more discreet way through the Zionists.
Yes.
And just so that people know, Zionism came in the 19th century, before the Nakba, right? And depending on which historian you believe, but it was basically a talk of how they wanted to have their own nation for a very, very long time. And they were actually discussing which land beforehand, before they came into Palestine. And just to give you an idea of how the Zionists really thought, it was being led by a person like this founder, right, was actually an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Take that mental note. He was actually an atheist with a Jewish background, meaning he grew up in a Jewish household. He had Jewish traditions, but he was an atheist. But then he was inspired. Him and his other group members were inspired by how colonizers were able to go to the States, take away the land of the Native Americans, and build their own country. They were inspired by that story, and they wanted to do the same. They wanted to take the land, take it away from the natives, but then include religion into it, because they felt that it would be more convincing, that it would be a stronger notion, and that they would have the right because it was the word of God.
Because it was written that it was for them.
It was, according to them, it was written.
Yes.
But if they look at it, imagine, then why did they choose Palestine? They were choosing other places as well beforehand. They just happened to choose Palestine.
Right.
Because they felt that because it has a religious connection, and it was their way of convincing people, that was the strongest argument that they had to take the land away.
Right.
Right. And the British were actually saying to the Palestinians that they wanted to bring the Jews there because they were refugees coming from what happened in the Holocaust. Right. In the beginning, they were just tourists. Before the Holocaust happened, we had a lot of Jews coming into Palestine as tourists, and some of them wanted to stay. And Palestinians were like, stay, welcome. like, it's okay if you want to live there. It's okay for me to share my land and my country, no problem. And then they started to increase. And then when the Nakba happened, which is right after, not immediately after, but that's right after what happened in the Holocaust, that was a shock to Palestinians, because they did not see it coming. It wasn't like the other colonizers where it was obvious. But here they thought that they were providing security for other Jews who were feeling like they were oppressed by another country. And it just, what happened?
Yes.
Overnight, we just lost, like, why am I being kicked out of my house?
Exactly.
See? So that's where the struggle really happened. Like, the tension really happened.
I can't imagine just waking up one day, or just living your life one day, and someone comes into your house and says and claims, oh, you know what, you have to leave because this is mine now. And you're like,
get out.
Wait, this is my house. And they're like, nope. If I don't take it, someone else will take it. I'm sure you've seen that video of this American guy from New York, who of course is a Jew, came in, started asking, and the Palestinian woman actually knows him by name. I forgot his name, but she kept telling him, yes, she kept telling him, Yakub, this is my house, you can't take it. And he's like, no, if I don't take it, someone else will.
So I'm doing you a favor.
I'm doing you a favor because you know me.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna kick you out peacefully. But other people won't kick you out peacefully, so I'll take it away from you. How?
It's like I'm the lesser of the two evils, so you still have to. Yeah, it's complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense.
He was being interviewed recently. They shot a documentary as well, and they interviewed him, and he said, it's not that we want to push out Palestinians, we just want to bring more Jews in. Yes. And then the interviewer was saying, but that just means you need to push them out. It's like, no, it doesn't mean that we want to push them out. It's just that they need to be pushed out. It's a necessary evil. Yes. So, this is how they were. I also don't want to fight, meaning I don't want to use bad words against other Zionists. Why? Because there are so many anti Zionists who were Zionists themselves, because they were brainwashed from when they were young to believe that Palestinians were evil people, especially our generation, right?
Yeah.
Because our generation, we were just taught by our parents and the parents before them. So this generation doesn't know any better. So I don't like attacking personally. I don't like when other people are saying, you are an animal, inta haywan, or inta kalb, like you're a dog. I don't like using words like that. I want everybody to use words of education. Talk to them because you want to change their minds, not because you want to degrade them like how they degraded you. You see, because you never know when you're going to inspire them to say, you know what, you're right.
That's true. I think that's important too when you point out education. But I think now that our generation is starting to learn more through the internet, through people who are teaching them, or from what is currently happening, I think this is when we need to start opening our minds to, it's not just about what was taught to you when you were younger, because our parents or their parents and generations behind them did not know any better, because that was what was also passed down to them. But in a generation where education is free, I don't think there's an excuse anymore to say, oh, this was what I was taught when I was younger. It's not. I refuse to believe that that's a valid excuse in this day and age, especially when you hear about the truth already. Like when you refuse to believe that that's true and you still believe that killing innocent lives is okay. That's when I'm like, no.
That's where you draw the line. And it is true, like in Asian households especially, it's very hard to talk back to the parents.
Yeah.
Like if your parents tell you to do something, even if you don't agree to it, you might as well at the end of the day still have to do it. So I think being woke, researching, doing your due diligence at the end of the day is still very, very important.
It's your duty.
When it comes to making up your mind,
Yeah.
I think though it's, yes, like you said, it's very important, and education is free right now because of the internet, because of social media. But I just want everybody who's fighting for Palestine to not fight dirty. That's it. Like if you're gonna fight with knowledge. And I want to bring this to light because, again, being happy is what you said. We have like this emotional awareness that we are more attuned to other people's feelings, and we are easy to look at both sides. So for the Zionists who are still believing what they believe, even if there's facts and everything, it's not just about knowledge, though. It's also about the fact that they have to face their guilt. Psychologically speaking and emotionally speaking, if they accept the truth, that means they have to accept that they were a part of the problem. And that's a bigger psychological hurdle than anything else. To accept that you were wrong is the hardest thing, especially when it comes to people's lives, when you see children. That's why there are so many of them who are living in denial.
Right.
They're not actively being like the leaders. The leaders know what they're doing 100%. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But the citizens, or even the people in the military, sometimes they are brainwashed so much that they have to be in denial from the truth. And that's why I don't like playing dirty. I don't like it when I see other Filipinos or other Palestinians or Arabs going below the belt.
Right.
Educate them, be mad,
Yes.
but don't go personal. Don't be like, you're gonna go to hell. Like these things like that. It's not your decision, because that person might have a change of heart.
Yeah.
I like that. As what you said, we can't attack, and what we kept on saying from the beginning of this video is you can't generalize a whole nation or a whole country because of certain people who are acting out negatively against others. And when our emotions take over with anger, that's when we don't think about what we're doing. And sometimes I'm very guilty of that. Like when I talk to you and I'm like, those Israelis, and then you're like, wait. Like sometimes he brings me back to earth and he's like, wait, hold up, that's not everyone, which is true. And I think we need to start thinking that way, that it's not everyone. There are certain people, unfortunately, but we have to think about the two sides.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't be mad, and I'm not saying you should be quote unquote sensitive to them. But I'm just saying, like, you need to be the bigger person. You need to find a way to get to them without being mean. Like, look at, we were talking about a Filipino Palestinian influencer, Subhi Taha. And Subhi, if you're listening, answer their email because you need to be on this podcast. Come on, man. Yes. But I was looking at his content, and he never insults a Jewish person or an Israeli person or even a Zionist. He never insults them. What he does is he educates them. You know, cancel culture is, I feel like it's so toxic because it doesn't allow people to have second chances. And that's not something that we should promote. We should promote you being enlightened. Like, we want you to be better. Not, we don't want you at all. We want you to be better because everybody deserves a chance to be better, you know? So right now, if you're angry, be angry. I'm not telling you don't be angry. Be angry. I'm angry. I'm like you. Like, I haven't had more than 4 hours of sleep in the past 14 days.
Right.
Honestly. Like, my brother and I, sometimes we see each other in the middle of the night because we just can't sleep. And, you know, I also want people to not blindly follow on both sides. If you're going to fight for Palestine, educate yourself a little bit so that when you talk to other people, you know what you're talking about.
That's so true.
Read also the context from Zionism. Like, the reason why I can talk about it so confidently and even talk to other Israelis and other Zionists, like, I've had Zionists message me.
Wow.
Because they want to understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
Not because they want to attack me. Like, you know, I message in the comments, I see these comments, and then I try to educate them. And one of them said, "Can I DM you?" How polite is that?
Wow.
Considering how polite. And we had a whole conversation, and I was able to give him like this whole history and backing up everything that he was saying to me. Everything that he was saying, I already knew. So I knew what to rebuttal. I knew what you're saying. He was saying something like, I want to mention this, like, he was saying, like, what about the Jewish people? Do they not have a right to be in a land that is holy to them? I said, no, come, by all means, you're welcome. Palestinians have welcomed you even before 1948, before you stole the land. Yes. But if we welcome you, that doesn't mean you should take our house. If you want to get land here, buy the land here legally. Yes. Not illegally kick me out of my own house. You're welcome here.
Agreed.
He said, doesn't that mean that we should have our claim? Because Judaism started there. Well, so did Islam. It started there. So did Christianity. It started there. Should the Christians come in and kick you out? How would you feel?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we had a very intelligent conversation. It was a very intelligent debate. And whether or not he changes his mind, I'm glad that I was able to say what I said, because it'll bring doubt. It'll bring doubt and allow him to think, like, I hope, and inshallah, like, I don't know if it'll change him, but somehow he's got to feel something if he brought it to a point where he needed to send me a message.
Yeah.
Spark has to be there. So
I'm really happy. I'm really happy to hear that, you know, people are still welcoming healthy conversations, because more and more so in, you know, a culture where internet, it's very quick to just shut it down or shut it off or cancel people, cancel culture, where you're like, if I don't like it, I'll shut you off. But what we actually need is to start talking about matters and not just say, you know what, I'm not on your side. I don't want to hear whatever you want to say. No, actually, you have to hear what other people have to say, because it might change how you're thinking. It will help you understand why you're correct or you're wrong. And facts are there. You just have to read them. You just have to educate yourself. Mm-hmm. Don't shut people off just because they don't believe the same beliefs that you have. It is difficult, you know, especially for people who are not used to saying I'm sorry or I'm wrong. But the more that you have these open discussion, only then will you be able to open your mind. And we wanted to touch upon the subject of how do you think we can support our brothers and sisters in Palestine? For those who are listening right now, what are the things? It might be small, it might be big, but what are the different things that we can do to help support them?
Number one is social media. A lot of people will say, oh, we should be sensitive to other people who don't want to post on social media because, they feel uncomfortable or they feel like they don't know enough about it. But I really hate the hypocrisy of how a lot of people want to post about Black Lives Matter and want to post about Stop Asian Hate, but they don't want to post about Free Palestine. Like if you don't post about politics in general, you're just not about that life. You just don't want to be involved with human rights or whatever because you're self-centered. Accept it.
Right.
Like I'm not going to hate on you. It's your prerogative. That's fine. But don't be posting about all of these other activism, but then you choose not to post about Palestine. A lot of Filipinos do that. They hop on the train because it's being popularized on social media. Do not pick and choose. You can't pick and choose human rights. It's human rights or nothing. It's all or nothing. So it is important to post on social media, and people think that it's nothing because they feel like, oh, social media is not going to do anything. But social media is already breaking down the Israel's facade. They spend millions of dollars on PR. They spend millions of dollars of trying to erase the history of Palestine. The whole motto of Zionism is a land without a people for a people without a land, which is 100% not true. There were people on that land. There were airports, there were hospitals, there were schools, there were everything. So being on social media is a fight within itself. It shows not only solidarity, but you are fighting with Palestinian people, because that's the only reason why people are looking at Palestine right now. They are seeing the truth. It's because of social media. So that's number one. That's the bare minimum.
Yes.
Hitting repost on your story, copy pasting, that's the bare minimum, right?
Yes.
And the second thing is if you find organizations that are credible and that need your help in terms of funds, go ahead and do that. Excuse me. If there are other people also who are organizing protests, go ahead and join that fight, because you need, again, to be the voice of the voiceless.
Yes.
In other ways, I think if you're really serious about helping the change, it's to create more letters and signing it and sending it to your politicians, and really putting pressure on your politicians and putting pressure on influential people as well to talk about it and to make content, no matter what type of content it is. I don't want you to make insulting content where, like you said, like the poop emoji and everything on TikTok. I want you to make educational content, whether it's you reacting to a certain news or you giving actual facts that you've learned.
Yes.
Right. And cite your sources. Like if you're not comfortable with saying, oh, this is my opinion, then cite your sources. Cite like, this is where I got it from. According to this is what happened. Look with your eyes. Everybody can see the difference. And this is your chance to be on the right side of history. And the whole reason why people are so traumatized by this, right, is because we've never seen in our lives as millennials, we've never seen war.
Yes.
Face to face.
Yeah,
We've never seen the horrors of war. What if social media was happening during the Holocaust? It would have been a different conversation. It would have been a different reality, because people saw how horrible it was. Yet a lot of people tried to deny it. A lot of people tried to think that it didn't happen, and they didn't want to believe it. Mm-hmm. But now what we're doing in social media is they have no choice but to see it. They have no choice but to believe it, because it's there.
Yes.
There are photos, there are videos. So please, on social media, be vocal about it. If you don't have the means monetarily or financially, or if you don't have any influence or political power, just be a voice on social media, and you will have a great impact on helping the Palestinian people.
Yeah, I think no matter how hard it is to look at these photos of children being shot at, of, everything that is happening, of buildings falling down, it is important to shed light upon it, only because there are still people who are not aware of what's happening. We have to make sure that our brothers and sisters in Palestine are also being heard. It's difficult because even their voices are being cut off. Internet in Gaza is being cut off. They're not being able to share their stories. And the little stories that we're seeing on social media, we're actually already very thankful that we're seeing it. And for those little amount of posts, we have to amplify it. We're the, how do we say it? Amplifier of those tiny voices that
Yeah,
are
we're like their spokespeople.
Yeah.
Like what Zara said, we're giving voice to the voiceless when it comes to these kinds of things. Because at the end, if they cannot help themselves, we have to step in and help our brothers and sisters over there as well.
Because that's what they don't have. They don't want. Palestinians are not asking for a military. You know, they have nothing. They don't have a military. What do they have? Like people, Zionists are going to say, oh, they have Hamas, but Hamas is not our government. We are forced to be governed by them because of you.
Yes.
We have no government because of you. That's why Hamas exists. But which, by the way, Hamas only came in 1987. That's years after the Nakba.
Yes.
After the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. So what was your reason before 1987 of what was the justification for Zionists or Israel to hurt the Palestinian people before that?
Yes.
You know, Hezbollah, which is coming from Lebanon, that was in 1982. That wasn't even during the 1940s or the 1950s or the 1960s. No. So it was created because of you. It was created because of the Zionists. And I'm really shocked by a lot of people who refuse to also post on social media because I think it's because they're confused. Remember, we were earlier in the podcast, we were talking about how Arabs are always painted as the bad guys. So now they're thinking, I don't see bad guys. I see them being hurt. I see them bleeding. I see them crying or shouting for their lives, praying for their lives.
Yes.
You know? So how is it that the bad guys are suffering now? And they're just confused, especially Filipinos. Like they think most Filipinos would think that Arabs are the bad guys. So how come we should be with them? Don't they deserve, like they're confused right now. We're shaking them up.
Yes.
It's like the bad guys are fighting the bad guys so we can leave them to it, you know? So I think that's what a lot of people are thinking as well.
They're like, why do we need to shed light into this matter where I don't even understand it myself, perhaps? Maybe that's where they're also coming from. And I don't know how, for you, these are your countrymen. So for people who are, I'm not a Palestinian myself, I'm Lebanese, but I already feel so much for the people who are in Palestine. So I can't imagine how much you feel being half Palestinian yourself.
It's really terrible because I have family there as well. You know, a lot of people say like, oh, you don't know what's really going there. I'm like, yes, I do. I have family there. And one of the Zionists who messaged me, they were like, don't you feel bad for the Israeli families who have to stay in their bunkers because of the attacks of Hamas? I was like, in Tagalog, buti ka pa. Like, you know, lucky you guys have bunkers. What do the Palestinian people in Gaza have? They have nothing. They are not even under any type of security whatsoever. It's either they just pray that they won't get hit.
Yes.
That's it. That's all they have. That's all they have. The protection of, prayer. That's it.
Yes.
And they are willing and they're ready to die.
Yes.
They are ready to. They're not willing because nobody wills to die, but they're ready to die for their country.
Yeah.
And they've accepted that. They're like, if I die tonight, I die fighting for my country. It's just so weird to hear those statements in 2021. I just feel like instead of moving forward when these things happen, why are we going backwards?
Yeah, no one should have that insecurity, you know? It's really terrible.
Yeah. And these people who are being taken out of their house, they're not even given time to collect their stuff, to take at least their valuables. No, they're like, get out. This is ours now. Whatever's here is ours.
Yeah.
Imagine things you've been collecting.
They throw their stuff too. They throw their stuff.
Yeah. And they burn it, they destroy it. They're like, nope, whatever's left here is ours. Imagine things that you held on since you were a child, things that are important to you.
Your valuables.
All of that gone. It's just...
It's all just more than rockets. Like people are always saying, oh, Hamas threw rockets, small rockets over to to Israel, but they didn't see before that what was happening. Like what was happening? They attacked Al-Aqsa Mosque twice. Before that, they were already abusing a lot of Palestinians. Before that, what happened? They kicked out the people in Sheikh Jarrah. So do you not see what is being done to provoke the attack?
Yes.
And then before that also, I mean, not even before that, but like what's been happening way before, all the way until now, you still see apartheid, you still see ethnic cleansing, you still see genocide. And I want to mention the apartheid part because a lot of Filipinos also don't understand. But here's a clear image. My father, a pure Filipino, was able to visit Palestine many times back in the day. But my mother, who's a pure Palestinian, has never set foot in Palestine. Never.
Wow.
Yes.
See? And then my lolo, my sido from my mom's side, was able to visit only because he was old. It was only when he was in old age he was able to visit Palestine or come back to Palestine with my father. Yet when they were traveling in Palestine, my father went into one entrance because he's Filipino, the easier access entrance, the tourist entrance, but he had to wait for my sido in another line because that was specifically for the Palestinians, specifically for the Arabs. See, like this is already part of the apartheid, just being treated differently because of your race or your religion.
And you going into your own land. People in Sheikh Jarrah cannot even step foot into, let's say, if they want to go to Jerusalem and actually practice their faith. And I want to talk about religion as well, because people are saying, oh, this is Jews versus Muslims. It's not, because even Christians, even priests are being manhandled, videos of them being kicked out, of them praying within the churches. This is not about religion anymore. This is more than that.
Yes. And if it were truly about religion for Zionists, right, then how come they also mistreat Palestinian Jews?
Yes. True.
You see, so they don't, it's really not a religion thing. It's really not.
Yeah.
Because they always treat even Israeli Arabs, even Israeli Arabs who are Jews, they treat them as second-class citizens as long as they're Arabs. Just to let you know, like the people who are in Israel, they're not indigenous to the land. They are not Arabs or Arab Jews, because a lot of people think, oh, they're also Arabs. No, these are European Jews or Jews coming from even Latin America, like Argentina, or they are coming from the States. They're coming from all other parts of the world, and they were the ones who colonized this land.
Yes.
You see, and the Arab Jews are also being done as second-class citizens.
No.
The Palestinian Jews.
Yes.
They're considered second-class citizens. So it's just a shame that people are looking at religion. And I'm just so frustrated. I'm so frustrated, and I'm so ashamed also when I see here in like on social media, you might not see it as much, but the Filipino people, the Muslim Filipino people, and the educated ones like historians, you'll see historians, and those who are in politics and those who are lawyers, a lot of them are siding with Palestine. Right. But others, the other Filipinos are not. Many majority are unfortunately fighting for Israel.
Really hoping that one day, when in the near future, we can all talk about it again, but in a more positive form, and not talk about exactly. And I think all we can do for now, as you said, is keep talking about it, keep posting about it, educate people about it. And if you have the means to do so monetarily, send your donations to credible organizations. Just educate yourself as well as to where your money is going.
And follow, like, if you're not sure, follow influencers who are credible and know their history and their education about Palestine and even religion. I just want to add one more thing about the religious thing. In Islam, they call Jews as the closest thing to Islam. They call them our brothers and sisters that are close to the hearts of Muslims. So how can you say that Arabs or Muslims hate the Jewish? They don't. So
Yeah.
all Muslims out there, if ever that you start hating on Jews, don't, because it's not about Jewish people. It's about Zionism. Again, I keep saying this because anti-Semitism has been growing, and this is not what we wanted.
Yes.
You know,
True.
Islamophobia is growing as well, but I want us to be better than that. And for Catholics, I want you to, the Filipino Catholics specifically, or the Filipino Christians specifically, and this is going to be controversial for me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Okay, they are also using the Bible to praise what's been
Right.
going on in Israel, to praise what the Zionists have been doing, saying that they are the chosen people.
Yes.
Because that's what's written.
Yeah, that's what's written, and no one is even contesting that, because even in Islam they're saying it, but that doesn't give them the right to treat other people badly, or to abuse other people and to do all of these war crimes.
Right, and I think that's what's most important, because if we're talking about the Bible, the first two commandments is love God, and second is love your neighbors. How is it okay to talk about the two most important commandments and say, okay, but it's also written in the Bible that the Jews are the chosen people, so it's okay? And it's not just in the Christian community, even Islam, like these main religions, the first teaching is love your neighbors, love one another, and make sure that you respect one another regardless of what your religion is. So we can't say, oh, because they're Jews, they're Islams, they're Christians, Muslims, that we have to fight with one another, because all of our religion teaches us to say love one another regardless.
Exactly. And for Jews, like, since we talked about like Muslims and Christians, and for Jews, look, if this is a Jewish, if this were a Jewish initiative, right? How come a lot, and I dare say majority of Jewish people are against what's happening in Israel, are against Zionism? How come?
Yes.
It's inconsistent. If you see that even if Jewish people themselves are condemning what's happening and they are fighting for Palestinian rights, then that means something is wrong.
Yes.
That means this group of people, these are looking for political power. They're not looking for religious righteousness.
Yes.
It's not there. So please, everybody who is listening and watching, just please use your common sense. Please look at Israeli media, look at Western media, and look at all of the other medias out there, and compare for yourself and see. It's not going to be hard to see the right from wrong.
Yes. What's being erased and what's being told truthfully. I think that there's a line with how the media chooses to portray what's happening versus what people are actually sharing on their own, because that's when you see the difference between what they're trying to push through. And thank you so much for A, shedding light to what is currently happening, and B, letting us know how we can help our brothers and sisters. It's very important that we keep that narrative, and we continue on talking about what's happening in Palestine and Israel, and not just that, but everywhere else. If a country or a certain group of people are being or their voices are being taken away, I think it's very important that we help one another, regardless of their religion, regardless of their nationality, regardless of your race. And I just wanted to touch upon everything that you've been doing. You've achieved so much in such a young life. What would you say is something that you're most proud of?
Wow. That's honestly that's a heavy question, because I really feel like my work is not done. There are proud moments, but there's not anything that I feel like I'm so proud of it. Like I go around and I boast it, or even say that my life is done or my purpose is done here. I can't. I don't feel like I've done enough. Even I'm flattered. I'm flattered that you feel like I've achieved so much, but honestly, I still feel like it's not enough. And I'm still here. I'm still here for anybody who needs help or who needs me to help in educating other people, just like what you did, which I thank you guys for so much. I was so excited when I saw your email. And I just want to be a part of that. I want to be a spokesperson. I want to continue to be a voice, because fighting for human rights does not stop.
Right.
It's always needed.
Yes.
So hopefully influencers right now are going to evolve from just making content that's made for joy. It will also be for education and to remind people to use what they have, their privilege, to use their privilege to help others. So
Yes.
continue making happy content. Please, by all means, we need it. We need it in a time when we have the pandemic and all of these wars and all of these things that are happening. Please continue to make happy content. Please continue to earn money from your sponsors. But in the mix, continue to please also fight for the rights of people around the world and educating others. There's nothing bad about it. If you lose the sponsors, then that just means you're losing the wrong people. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes. Yes. I think it's being able to support a cause that needs your support, that needs your followers, that needs your voice, rather than just showing one side of what is happening. Great. We love your outfits. Great. We love the pictures that you're being able to take, the travel photos of where you've been, but also we need your voice to talk about something else that really, really matters. And just like what you're doing. So for you, what would you say, how do you see the next couple of years for Zahra?
Honestly, I thought of going elsewhere just so that I can have more perspective about what's going on in the world, how I can bring back more influence here in my own country, in the Philippines. And because of the pandemic, a lot of things just changed. Like I was supposed to travel this year, find a way to enhance my career. But right now, I think in the next few years, because of what I've realized, it's more about centering myself on and figuring out what's really more important to me. I think before the pandemic, we were all lost in what we thought was important, but we forget that what's really important is who we are, understanding what we really want, and not just being distracted by everything that we want now, what we want in the long run. And being 29, I really want to focus on being a more serious influencer and being inshallah, like I'll have my own family in the next few years, settle down in the next few years, but continue to be a good role model and to share my voice and to mentor more people. That's where what I'm going for right now. Like I went from being a beauty queen to being a pageant coach. I'm teaching right now for Miss Universe. I think I did El Salvador and Miss Cambodia and a few other countries on their Q&A and their public speaking. And that's just us. Well, yeah, if you need help.
If he needs help.
How's my wave? Is it okay? This wave is good?
I'll help you out, my man. Like, just let me know. But I'm just right now at the part where I want to establish myself as soon as I can, because I want to move forward and give to others. And I'm doing that giving part to others in the best way that I can in my own resources right now. But yes, now more of finding out, centering myself, self-care, taking care of my body, taking care of my mental health, because I realized so many things during the pandemic and the lockdown. And in the next few years, hopefully implementing what I've learned and sharing it with other people. And it sounds like super beauty queen the way I'm saying it right now, like, oh, well, please help other people. But I mean, it's always been a passion. If you ask me what I wanted to be when I was younger, I don't think I would give you one straight answer. One year it would be a doctor, the next year it would be a lawyer, the next year it would become part of the United Nations or whatever. But now when I look back, it's three things that I've always wanted, which is anything that would allow me to travel, meet people, connections, all of these things. It's something that I value. And second would be to earn money, of course, because there's no shame in wanting to be rich, because it'll allow you to help other people and to secure yourself and your family. And third, I wanted something that would allow me to help other people. I don't think I can accept a job that doesn't allow me to pay it forward.
Yes.
Beautifully said. Yes.
Yeah,
Very nice.
just like a beauty queen. Perfectly said.
Here's your crown.
We award you your crown right now. Thank you so much, Zahra. Like we're very, very blessed that A, we have this platform, but B, because we're able to bring people like you on board and be able to have, a couple of minutes, hours to talk about what's important in life. And we couldn't agree more with, the self-care and self-love, because during the pandemic, that's what we realized, right? How important being able to put yourself first as well. Because if you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to be able to take care of others?
Yes, you said it. Yes, queen.
Wait, let me take it for a while.
I'll share.
Oh wait, actually wants it to.
It's like passing it around. Like everyone's a queen.
Before we end the podcast, how can our listeners stalk you? If you can just plug all of your Instagram and social media handles for us, please.
Yes, go ahead. It is ZB Saldua. That's ZBSALDUA across all platforms. That's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and on YouTube as well. Not so much content on YouTube just yet, but definitely on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can also email me. That's ZBSaldua, ZBSALDUA @gmail.com. So you won't really forget it. It's just that thing all across. And feel free to just message me, stalk me, follow me. Just, bring love with you.
And she replies because we sent her an email. That's how we slid into her emails, and she replied to us. So if you guys have any questions for her, feel free to email her, message her on Instagram, and follow her on YouTube as well for the followers that we have on YouTube. And is there anything else that you'd like our followers to know about you? Any message that you have before we close off the episode?
Honestly, I just want everybody to really take this time to take care of themselves. And that includes educating themselves and finding their voice. It is about finding out who you are and just coming out of this better. It is an opportunity. Like for me, I did not come out of my mom's vagina confident. I was not this person when I came into the world. I really learned, and the way I learned was I forced myself, just like I forced myself to learn Filipino. It's the same thing with my career. I forced myself to explore different types of career before I landed on being a host and a public speaker and all of these things. I did not plan these, but in order for you to be who you are, then you have to push yourself to do other things and to explore and to be open to listening to other people and learning from them. And I just want to say, I want to turn my attention from me to you guys, because like I said, I really love the fact that you have this type of podcast where you're talking about halfies, and it's not to boast about being half a Filipino or half other thing is so great, but really to share perspective on the world, because we have unique experiences that can touch base on two different types of cultures and thinkings and nationalities, and we can bring a little bit of wisdom and diplomacy from how we feel and what we've experienced. And it has so much depth. So I'm happy that there's a podcast like this, because if there weren't, I would be doing a podcast like this right now.
Please
we
do.
beat you to it though. So.
Please do. We would be listening to your podcast, and I think you'd be a perfect host.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
very, very soon I will, but it would be something completely not completely different, but like along the themes of what I'm saying. But I'm happy to have this type of podcast, happy that you will increase listeners, I hope. And I love the fact that you're also delving into difficult topics, and it's not just the shallow part of being a halfie, but getting the deep side of all of these issues, whether it's sociological, political, and mental. All of these things have a really great way of telling a story and making a change. And I'm very thankful to be a part of this podcast, not just because you're there and you're hosts, but I'm genuinely saying this. So I'm promoting you guys. And for all of the listeners out there, please do share this podcast, because it's really great. And I've heard a lot of their other content as well. This is not going to be, this might be the best one episode. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Of course.
Here's the crown again.
Oh, thank you. But they have a lot of great episodes that I've listened to before I came on this. Before I even agreed, when you sent me an email, I had to check you guys out. Like maybe these guys are sketchy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Are they?
Exactly. So it was really great to hear a lot of your content, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you again.
Thank you so
so
much,
much. Thank you so
Zahra.
much.
Wanna close off the episode, sir? Kind
Yes,
sir?
I don't mind. So thank you once again, guys, for listening to another episode of the Half a Nice Day podcast. And please do follow Zahra on all her social media platforms. Thank you once again for being a part of this episode. I hope we shed some light on what's currently going on in the world and we enlighten some people. And if you do have any further questions, you can always reach out to us or Zahra.
If you guys have any other podcast guests that you would like us to take on, please let us know. I know Zahra has a couple of friends that she would also be able to recommend to us. So please slide into our DMs.
Do you know Erwan Husaf?
I have a contact who can talk to Erwin Hughes.
He's a big fan.
Very big fan. Fanboying him, yeah. But so I'll keep a separate contact with you later. I'll chat with you later on that. But everyone listening, please do subscribe and like, and what else? Turn on the notification bell on our YouTube channel so that you're notified whenever we drop a new episode. And you can always listen to us if you always opt for the audio experience. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you consume your podcasts on.
That's it.
Yeah. Show some love, spread this podcast, keep everyone educated, and let them know what's going on in the world.
And
on that note, you want to do it as Zahra? We end the podcast
with a song, with a little, not a song, but a little.
We just sing "Half a Nice Day," so
Yeah.
we go like in our highest falsetto voice, like "Have a nice day." So you can.
Okay, I'll try that.
We'll try it. So usually we say, and on that note, have a nice day. Okay, so you can start it.
So on that note,
Have a nice day.
very good. We're a choir now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We
Thank you
love
so
you
much.
guys.
Like you as a friend. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay.